According to the information we have, forces of a foreign power are preparing an act of aggression against Niger and its people in coordination with ECOWAS and armed terrorist groups. Faced with the threat of intervention that is becoming clearer through preparation from a neighboring country, Niger's airspace is closed as of today for all airports until further notice. Any attempts to violate national airspace will be met with an energetic and instantaneous response.
Well,
Niger don't block everywhere. Niger don't block everywhere. They don't block airspace. Anything where they pass air to enter Niger, they don't block everything. And the president also say, make una just wait. We are waiting for Nigeria to come.
According to the information we have, forces of a foreign power are preparing an act of aggression against Niger and its people in coordination with ECOWAS and armed terrorist groups. Faced with the threat of intervention that is becoming clearer through preparation from a neighboring country, Niger's airspace is closed as of today for all airports until further notice. Any attempts to violate national airspace will be met with an energetic and instantaneous response.
Well, Niger's ousted Prime Minister has told Al Jazeera that there is still hope for a diplomatic resolution to the crisis, but he's also calling for military intervention by ECOWAS if the coup leaders refuse to relinquish control.
The coup can be a serious problem for the entire region, and the outcome will all depend on the nature of the intervention. This is why I can say we should trust the military experts from ECOWAS and the mechanisms for this intervention that we are expecting if they decide to go ahead with that decision. If a military intervention doesn't take place, a true tragedy will happen in the region if this coup succeeds. As you know, 3 coups have happened in West Africa, and this will be the 4th. And if we let it succeed, expect more coups in the future. Niger is technically operating as a bloc that is standing and defending the expansion of the armed groups towards the south.
We have 2 correspondents covering the political crisis in Niger. Bernard Smith will have the French reaction from Paris in just a moment, but let's bring in Charles Stratford. He's been following the developments from the Senegalese capital, Dakar, and we've heard from the Niger's ousted Prime Minister talking about what's at stake, not just for Niger, but for ECOWAS too. With that deadline now gone on Sunday, Charles, what are ECOWAS's options?
Well, what I think is important to emphasise is that just because that deadline has expired, it by no means suggests that we're going to be seeing any kind of immediate military response from ECOWAS. There are still a lot of hurdles that ECOWAS have to jump over. We understand that there are still discussions going on looking for a peaceful and diplomatic solution to this crisis. According to our sources in Nigeria, ECOWAS are expected to hold a special meeting on Thursday to further discuss the crisis, to explore all other avenues other than that military option that, as you say, would be a last resort. And we also know that ECOWAS are facing serious problems as well. The respective countries that could be part of some sort of military intervention in trying to get clearance, green lights from their respective legislative bodies, their parliaments, for the deployment of troops in any kind of mission. We saw in the last couple of days a refusal by Nigeria's Senate to take up the President of Nigeria's proposal of a deployment of troops. Many senators in the Nigerian Senate saying, look, we don't want to be involved in any kind of military intervention. There's too much at stake. We've got too much on our hands in dealing with groups like Boko Haram and other armed groups operating inside Nigeria. And many analysts will say, look, if Nigeria are having problems, getting their governments on board for any kind of...
Make you not be saying I made talking too much. I just bring her for this afternoon. I see the hot. If not good morning, I say good morning to you. If not good evening, I say good evening to you. If not you sleep, I say make you go for you. Oh, kwada everyone no kweba again. Now what I gonna moon another new zone ya like kwani kono watch ya kono mwenye na many. Koni president of Niger Republic in the Kuna.
Employment, then that spells big difficulties potentially for other governments like Ivory Coast, like Guinea, like Sierra Leone, like Liberia, because without Nigeria, which is expected to take the lead in any kind of potential military intervention, it's going to be very difficult for anything like that to actually happen. But as I say, we are still quite a long way off that yet as diplomatic efforts continue.
Yeah, and very difficult because of the great risks involved. What are they, Charles?
Well, there are a whole host of risks. I think it's really important to recognise as well what analysts are constantly pointing to, and that is the level of support for this coup inside Niger. Over the last couple of days, we've seen huge crowds, tens of thousands of coup supporters gathering in the capital, Niamey. So, of course, any kind of military intervention there has massive risk, a reaction from those supporters. And we've had statements from the coup leaders in Niger telling their supporters to prepare for a potential military action by ECOWAS. Then, of course, there is the risk of contagion, of a spread of any kind of intervention right the way across the region, because we already know that Mali and Burkina Faso have already said that any intervention inside Niger by ECOWAS would constitute a declaration of war on those countries too. And interestingly, there's been a statement this morning put out by the Malian military leaders saying that there is a joint Burkina Faso and Malian delegation on its way to Niamey to show, in their words, solidarity with the Niger coup leaders. And then, of course, there is the huge risk of a further deterioration in security across the region because of the various armed groups that operate there, Al-Qaeda and ISIS, these groups that have committed attacks that have killed thousands of people in the last decade or so and basically forced millions to flee their homes and across borders. So, of course, this is very much on the minds of those ECOWAS officials as we understand these discussions continue.
All right, Charles, thank you for that. Charles Stratford with the latest live in Dakar. Let's bring in Bernard Smith now. He's joining us live from the French capital. And France watching developments very closely, Bernard. What are they saying?
France and the rest of Europe and the United States watching developments very closely. France has suspended aid payments to Burkina Faso, and that is after Burkina Faso and Mali both said that they would consider any military intervention in Niger as a declaration of war on them as well. So France trying to use its aid muscle to punish, in a way, Burkina Faso. And Air France has actually just announced a suspension of flights to Ouagadougou. Niger also runs the risk of losing aid if this...
Make it hear them and hear what they talk. Translate by English. Now French in the speak, but he go tell you say he no need them. Small time they go change their money, just hear and see the prepare and see all the weapon, everything gathered. Make us they prepare, they wait for Nigeria. ECOWAS we gonna call, make una dry, enter inside ground, make ground open, make una just swallow. I don't understand me.
Military coup continues. The US has already suspended some development aid programs to Niger, although it's continuing with humanitarian programs, and all of that, the French, the risk of Niger of losing that development aid if the military intervention continues.
All right, Bernard, thank you for that. Bernard Smith with a view from Paris. Janet McAlligott is a former White House official. She says the role of ECOWAS has changed over the past decades.
It was supposed to be something akin to, what the Europeans have done. It was supposed to be about trade, putting down barriers, and being a much more united West African bloc of 15 nations. But it's become kind of a policeman because things are rather difficult. The new president of